Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first wrap up of 2023. So this is my January wrap up and we're just going to really quick go through all of the books that I read in January. Also, we're in a little bit of a different space today only because it's so gorgeous in the back of my house when the sun goes down, and so I just thought, why not catch some of that fun golden hour light? Honestly, it's been pretty dark and dreary for Virginia in January, so I'm happy that the sun is out. I just want to bask in it for a while, you know? All right, so the first book that I read in January is The Last House on the Street by Diane Chamberlain, and I read this one because I read a Diane Chamberlain book last year as my first book of the year, and it ended up being like my second favorite book of the entire year. So I thought, let's try again. And maybe I put a little bit too much pressure on myself for this, but it was still a enjoyable read. I did rate this 3 stars. So this story is about a woman in the 50s, 60s, 1965, and she decides to spend her summer encouraging Black people to vote. And so you have that, but then you also have a little bit of forbidden love in here, and then you also have a dual timeline of current day in the same area in the same town of a woman who is moving into a house and nobody seems to want her to move into it. And the two timelines do converge pretty well, but I definitely don't feel like there was enough character development for me for a lot of the characters, particularly in the modern day timeline. I feel like I didn't get to know the character at all. And the character of Ellie, who is the character who spans both timelines, we do get some character development for her, but overall, I pretty much guessed what happened. I did learn a lot, and I do think that this is a worthwhile read, especially if you enjoy that time frame or you enjoy the kind of social discussions that go on here. Definitely trigger warnings for quite a few things, so definitely look those up. But it was an enjoyable read, just not the best Diane Chamberlain that I've read to date. Next book I read was The History of Wild Places, and I read this for the Reading Booktubers Favorites vlog that I did. I read this because of my friends Jessie and Gwen. Basically, you have this woman who went missing. A couple people went missing. You have a detective who's trying to find her. And then through that, you realize that a lot of these people ended up stuck in this kind of cult community. And overall, this book just didn't do a whole lot for me. I felt really bored. I didn't like any of the characters, and I just didn't mesh with the writing style. It was too descriptive, too flowery, too overdone, and I was spoiled for it, so there's that as well. So overall, I feel like there are other books that did this twist and this trope better. Next, I read The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth, and I read this because of my friend Keisha from the channel A Book Like You, and I gave this book 3 stars. It is not a thriller, and that is one of my main bones to pick. If you are going to write a thriller, write a thriller. If you are going to write a literary suspense, write a literary suspense. I definitely went into this book expecting a thriller because it was marketed as such, so I do feel like that affected my reading experience a little bit. Honestly, it almost feels a little bit sketchy. Like, maybe if we say that this is a thriller, more people will read it because people pay attention when the word thriller is attached to a book. But anyways, overall it was a decent book. I do think that I will read more Sally Hepworth. The writing style was nice. It almost was like a nice palate cleanser type of book, just quick, easy to listen to, easy to digest, easy to understand, nothing shocking, nothing that you wouldn't see coming, but good character development, things like that. I also like the representation of one of the main characters having an intellectual disability. So you're following this woman and her sister, and she does state in the book that her sister has an intellectual disability. And so it almost reminded me of reading The Maid by Nita Prose, where you're in somebody's head and hearing all of their logic and some things that social cues and social commentary that she doesn't really understand. You kind of step back and think like, oh yeah, that does sound kind of weird, like now that you really break it down. And basically the two kind of devise plans separately on how to get a baby and raise a baby. And it's just kind of interesting shenanigans. There's an interesting romance element to it, and I did like that about it, but I kept having to remind myself this is not a rom-com, because it definitely felt like every rom-com that I've read. You know, you have the meet cute, you have the guy who's really nice, you have the girl that doesn't really know how to date, isn't really interested in dating. It almost reminded me of like the soulmate equation a little bit. But then you had that sinister element of one person trying to get a baby, another person trying to manipulate the situation to get a baby. And so I feel like I'm not pitching this book well, but I did give it 3 stars, and I will read Sally Hepworth again. But definitely look up other reviews because I'm not even enjoying my own review of this book. Okay, next I want to talk about the books that I read for the New Year New Reads Readathon. I will link all of the information about that readathon in the description. That one happened this past month, and I had every intention of vlogging, but not only was it over my birthday, but I also got COVID, so I did not end up vlogging just because I was busy with birthday festivities, and then I got pretty sick with COVID. But the first book that I read for that readathon was Off the Deep End by Lucinda Berry, and my friend Jessie and I from the channel Reading with Jess, we had a whole discussion about this on her channel for the Sleep When I'm Dead book club, and we had Lucinda Berry on the live with us. So I will link that below. Definitely go back and watch that because we talk in depth about this book. We asked Lucinda Berry a lot of questions about what it's like being a writer and her day-to-day life and things like that. So definitely go check that out. But essentially, this book is about a woman who is in a car accident with her son and her son's friend, and she goes over a cliff, crashes her car into the water, and she grabs a hand and pulls a child to safety, and she thinks it's her son, but it actually ended up being the friend. Her son actually died. So that has already happened when this book starts, and we're following the mother now. She has literally gone off the deep end, and she is staying in an assisted care home, trying to heal from her trauma, and now the teenage boy that she saved from the wreck is now missing. And so of course she's the #1 suspect. I liked that a lot of this was written as case files between the patient and the therapist. And this definitely takes a very dark turn at the end, and I did not see it coming. So definitely check out trigger warnings. But if you have some pretty intense triggers related to this particular thing, then I think you might want to know about it. But overall, I enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. It's not my favorite Lucinda Berry. My top book is still Saving Noah, but this is definitely high up there in the list. I definitely think this is a worthwhile read. It's a good character study, but it's also fast-paced, and I didn't know who to trust in this book. I didn't know who to root for, and it just overall was just so well done. Lucinda Berry knocks it out of the park every time. The next book I read for the New Year New Reads Readathon was Trailed, One Woman's Quest to Solve the Shenandoah Murders by Catherine Miles. And this is a true crime story that my boyfriend gave to me. He said he saw this and he saw that it took place right around where we live, and he was like, I don't know, this is kind of a shot in the dark. I don't know if you'll like this, but here you go. And I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 3 stars. What I didn't enjoy about this is the same thing that I don't enjoy about a lot of true crime, which is when the storyline jumps around. I would much rather have you start at the beginning, even if it's at the beginning of the victim's life, and then work your way up, versus jumping around to different timelines. It kind of lost me there in some points. If you are really into national parks, this is great because I learned so much about national parks that I didn't know about. If you really enjoy camping and hiking and outdoorsy things like that, you will definitely enjoy this. However, I don't really enjoy that, and it's not really a hobby of mine, so there's a lot of terms I didn't understand, and so some of that part I kind of wanted to skim. But overall, if any of those things sound like things that you enjoy in your true crime novels, then try this one out. Next, I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall, and this was my book of the month pick for this month. And if you like Riley Sager's writing, you will like this. This is very formulaic of Riley Sager. You have the kind of depressed, recluse, young 20-something heroine who is trying to solve some sort of mystery, but is also not completely innocent herself, and you're not really sure if you can trust her, with, you know, some twists along the way. So this is definitely a good story. If you enjoy Riley Sager's writing, you will enjoy this. But essentially, this is a group of girls, and something sinister happened to them in the woods when they were young children. They testified against the person who they said did it, but now that they're adults, more things are coming out. That's all I'm gonna say. But this was a really enjoyable read, and I did give it 4 stars. And next we have my first 5-star read of the year, and that is Scribd by Ian Reid. And I read this because of Ashley and also because of Elizabeth. And this was also featured in that Reading Booktubers Favorites vlog that I did. But essentially this is I'm told the term is social horror. There's not like blood and guts and slashing and stuff happening, but there are definitely horror and terrifying elements to this, because this is basically written from the perspective of an elderly woman who is transitioning to a nursing home. And at first she is like, wow, this is great. I've, never slept better. The food is great. I have friends. She's thinking, okay, like this will be a good place to live out the rest of my life. And then some sketchy things start happening, and we're not really sure if we can trust our main character, Penny, but we're also not really sure if we can trust the other people that live in the assisted living home, or the workers that work there with the individuals that live at this home. I will link my vlog. Definitely go watch it if you want to see me ugly cry for about 4 minutes because of this book. It was so good. It was so atmospheric. It made me question everything that I knew. It is heartbreaking. It's beautiful. Just pick it up. Just try it. Just try it. There is a little bit of an ambiguous ending to it that is shocking and heartbreaking, but I definitely think this is worth a try. And next we have The Buddha in the Attic by Julie Otsuka. This is a really short, under 200 page, I don't even know how you would describe this. I guess literary fiction? Literary, I don't even really know. Historical, literary, I'm not really sure, because it's based on real people and real events, but essentially this follows an entire ship's worth of women who are traveling to the US to, essentially they were mail order brides. And it basically goes through all of these different women and girls, really, and their lives, and what it's like coming to the US to marry somebody that you've never met, and all of the reasons behind why they're doing this and how they came to be here. And this was beautiful and heartbreaking and very divisive in the writing, which I appreciated. And I have not read a book in a while that I have wanted to annotate, but I might actually go back and annotate this book, maybe with like book darts or something, so I don't have to write on the actual pages. And anytime she talked about the girls or the brides in this, she always said we, us. So it was like, we are here because of X, Y, and Z. We did X, Y, and Z. We feel this way about our husbands. And that kind of herd group mentality really worked in this type of story. And the reason I gave this 4 stars instead of 5 is because it got a little political there in the middle, and I didn't really understand what was going on at one point. But the first half and the end were so good. I just found myself kind of skimming a little bit in the middle. So that's why it was 4 stars instead of 5. But I definitely am going to try to pick up more from Julie Otsuka. Her books are kind of hard to track down though, and when I do find them, they're kind of expensive. So I'm gonna have to keep my eyes peeled on Pango. We have one more book to talk about, and that is The Family Next Door by John Glatt. And this was the last book that I read for my Reading Booktubers Favorites vlogs, and I read this because of my friend Jacqueline. And I enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. It's another true crime, and this is about the Turpin siblings. There's 13 of them, and it was discovered that they were being abused and neglected in their house. And when I say abused and neglected, I really mean abused and neglected. Like, I'm talking chained up in their houses, sexual abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, really the works. They were only allowed to shower once a year. They were getting basically no schooling, and the schooling that they did get, if they got an answer wrong, they were beaten, refused food, things like that. They were only given like 1 peanut butter sandwich a day to eat. Just horrible, horrible, horrible things. And eventually one of the girls was able to escape and find law enforcement and get her and her siblings removed from that situation. But so you just follow this court case, and I liked that John Glatt did a timeline and kind of went from start to finish with this book. There wasn't hopping around in the timelines. You start when the parents are both born, you learn about their lives, you learn how they met, you learn about them having kids, and it goes all the way through from start to finish. I like that. It makes sense to me. I can follow it. It feels more like storytelling as opposed to like jumping around. And something that I found just like super creepy and ominous about this is that when they removed the children from the house, they found all of these recordings of reruns of John and Kate Plus 8 and the Duggars. And the mom said that she thinks that her family should have a reality TV show like the Duggars or the Goslings did. And reading that was just bone chilling. And since then, I have been like looking up more things about this case and learning more about these siblings and where they are now and how they're dealing with their trauma. And it was just such a heartbreaking heartbreaking situation, and it really does go to show that you don't really know what's going on in somebody's house. Okay, that is all of the books that I read in January. Let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Are any of these your favorite? I'm running out of daylight, so I'm gonna wrap this up, but thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, it really helps out my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!